Hey Wookiees, Rebels, and more. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the first entry into a new series that I'm calling the Journey 2 series. It's inspired off of the publishing effort that the Star Wars movies do. I don't know if they'll still do them with the new movies, but at least for the sequel trilogy and Solo and Rogue One, they did these Journey 2 books where they would make a bunch of books or comics that were connected and related to the upcoming movie. And it gave me like insight into the new movies. They were always really small things like who that background character was, or maybe an introduction to one of the characters or some growth that they had in between two movies or whatever. And the publishing effort always got me really excited and hyped for the new project. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to make this series where I reread, I rewatch, and I kind of break down a custom Journey 2 series. So to kick off the series, we're starting it with Bad Batch Season 3, where we will be looking at Hyperspace Comic number 10, mainly because it's the only comic book to feature the Bad Batch. Dark Disciple, because Ventress is making a prominent return. Everyone's talking about this book right now, and I want to reread it to take notes on how Ventress might be able to survive. Then I went through the Clone Wars episodes 1 through 4. This is our introduction to the Bad Batch, you know, getting their backstory and when Crosshair was still a good guy, and of course, adding Echo to the team. Lastly, we'll be going through Bad Batch Season 1 and 2 and kind of giving my thoughts. The aim of this is to speculate, theorize, and just have fun talking about the Bad Batch and kind of see if we can find anything that will relate to the upcoming season. The first thing we're going to look at is a comic. This comes out of Hyperspace number 10. I included this simply because it was the only comic book that features the Bad Batch. I don't actually think that there's going to be any relevance to this specific comic book moving into Season 3. I think they will reflect on their time in the Clone Wars, thinking about that as like the good old days when Crosshair was on the team, when they were just a solid unit. In this comic, the squadron is tasked with taking down a droid smith who has perfected specialized battle droids before the smith can sell them to the separatists. These droids are like mirrors for the Bad Batch, as they all have augmented abilities that might prove to be a true threat on the battlefield. This story doesn't necessarily add anything special that the TV show hasn't already done for us, but I did notice in this comic book that Wrecker and Crosshair actually had a pretty fun rapport, and we'll definitely see more of that as we move into the Clone Wars episodes 1 through 4. This Clone Wars arc was the first time we got to meet the Bad Batch and the first time that the Batch was introduced to a wider audience. If you were like me, you ended up watching these episodes when they were just animatics, like years before they were officially and finally produced and finalized. Not only did we get this arc in the Clone Wars, but we also got the Bad Batch as their own TV show, which I think is really cool to see how far this squadron has come. While rewatching these episodes, the first thing I noticed was we get a lot of insight into their characters and how far they've come. Crosshair considers the Regs expendable, which he kind of has to learn throughout Season 1 and 2, and by Season 3, I don't think he'll see the Regs as expendable at all. I also thought it was incredibly interesting seeing Wrecker and Crosshair's dynamic. Like when Rex and Crosshair do get in a fight, Wrecker immediately backs up Crosshair, even though I think we can all agree Crosshair was in the wrong. And I don't think that Natural Alliance will come back when we see Crosshair rejoin the Bad Batch in Season 3, but I would like it, I want to see Wrecker and Crosshair heal. The second moment I noticed, there's a scene where the squadron has saved Echo and now they're escaping Skeko Minor with Rex and Anakin, and they find themselves on like this long pipe. This might not have meant anything at the time, but it definitely counts as foreshadowing now. Wrecker, who is scared of heights, is complaining, and Tech says that if you fall, don't take me with you. Tech will of course later, as we know, fall, allowing his brothers to escape. If Tech didn't shoot the wire, his entire team would have fallen with him. And it's fun to see how his logic, even though I think he's joking in this situation early on in the Clone Wars, but it still holds with him when we get to the end of season 2 and he inevitably has to save his brothers. Looking back, I'll never be able to hear this line the same ever again. Echo is saved and joins the Bad Batch. I honestly forget he's pretty new to Clone Force 99. It makes sense that throughout the series he wants to join Rex's clone rebellion, break away from the Batch, not because he dislikes him, he just wants to be a part of the cause that's bigger than himself. He feels like going on the missions for Sid and stuff is just not what he wants to do. Like both Tech and Hunter question his loyalty to the Republic.
Well, I guess you actually are on our side.
Going back to Wrecker and Crosshair's relationship, they actively compete and challenge one another to see who can destroy more droids. Wrecker goes blaster free, just demolishing droids with his bare hands, and he gets this nice droid body count. And then following that, Crosshair throws all of his mirrors around, the reflective discs that bounce blasters off, and he ones up Wrecker, and Wrecker's just like stunned, and Hunter has to remind him like, oh, you'll get him next time. And even Crosshair has some like sibling rivalry here.
Relax, Wrecker. You'll top him next time. No, he won't.
I wonder in season 3 if this dynamic, this sibling rivalry between Wrecker and Crosshair can stay, or if like this is just the good old days and they're too far gone. They've been through too much and this is all behind them. The next project I got into was Dark Disciple. Now, I don't think this will have a ton to do with the Bad Batch Squadron themselves, but as we see in the trailer, Asajj Ventress is returning. So I wanted to kind of go through this book, see if there's any hints to how she could have survived. I don't think the book actually planned anything on how she could have survived. I think the author's intention at the end of this book is that Asajj Ventress does die, but I still wanted to reread it, take notes, and see if there's anything I could find that could hint on how she could survive, what she could be doing, any kind of details like that. All right, the first thing I picked up was actually as far as chapter 13, when Ventress explains to Voss the mourning and grieving process for a Night Sister's death. She talks about the pools of life that makes it possible for Night Sisters to become like cocooned and then zombified, and of course we know with the Night Sister magic they can eventually be revived. In chapter 15 we learn about the Water of Life, which was a liquid used by the Night Sisters of Dathomir to heal. Making this thing was like a rite of passage for Night Sisters because they would have to like go and take a piece of this like creature called the Sleeper, and then once you got a piece of this creature you could use that body part to like make the potion that will like heal you. So we could see this same potion being used. I do think it was interesting that the book goes out of its way to explain the Waters of Life and its properties. It is possible, however unlikely, that this was used to set up the return of Ventress. Regardless if the book set it up or not, season 3 I think has an obligation to explain how Ventress survived. They already made a press release saying that they're going to honor the book, so I really would like just a throwaway line that says, oh yeah, Night Sister magic. I know there's dozens of ways that we can explain this. It may not be like super critical for understanding her episode in the Bad Batch, but I think it is a critical thing for the overarching Star Wars mythos on how does she survive. The absolute last thing I want is somehow Asajj Ventress returned. In chapter 16, Ventress contemplates her life after successfully killing Count Dooku. That's like the whole mission of the book, by the way. It's Quinlan Voss is assigned by the Jedi Council to go and kill Count Dooku, and he recruits Asajj Ventress to like help him because she's the only one that's gotten close. So Quinlan Voss and Asajj Ventress team up. Ventress is teaching Quinlan the dark side, and they get really close together. They get romantically involved. This is a moment where they're in the middle of their romance. The two are sitting by a fire and Ventress is contemplating her life after they do kill Count Dooku. At least in this moment in the middle of the book, she dreads not having Quinlan Vos in her life. We could see a Ventress who is still with Quinlan Vos or is still looking for Quinlan. And it would be kind of awesome if Asajj Ventress was like helping Quinlan like save young Jedi. We know Quinlan Vos was a part of the path that like we saw in Kenobi. Quinlan and Asajj could also be separated. Like Quinlan's out there in the galaxy. She knows that Quinlan survived and is looking for him and is trying to find him to reunite with him. The third option here is of course the most unsatisfying option. Asajj knows that Quinlan's alive, Quinlan knows that she's alive, and they just are like broken up. They don't want to be together anymore. You can do that. It would just be incredibly unsatisfying if you make a statement that says you understand the events of Dark Disciple and you're gonna honor them. While I don't think we necessarily need her to mention Quinlan Vos while she's in the Bad Batch, I do think she should be with him, trying to look for him, still have some kind of connection with him. I think there could be a huge opportunity here if Quinlan and Asajj Ventress aren't together. We could have Asajj Ventress saying that she's trying to find someone. We know it's Quinlan Vos. And then after her arc, we get the announcement, or we find out later that they're making like a Dark Disciples 2, where the author could come back and we could get a whole new book where it's in the Imperial era and we get Quinlan and Asajj Ventress returning. We can see everything that Quinlan's doing with the path. I think there's a story there. I think that would be really cool. I would definitely pick that up, but I digress. Let's go ahead and look at the next project, which is Bad Batch Season 1. I forgot how much I actually enjoyed Season 1. Like, unlike the other Star Wars shows, like Season 1 of Clone Wars, Season 1 of Rebels are kind of like okay, and the shows get better and better. But Season 1 of Bad Batch already started on a pretty high note that I'm not disappointed that the series is ending, because we have so many good episodes. This might just be me, but I really feel like only a handful of episodes were like serious duds. And like the first thing they did with making Crosshair the main villain of Season 1 was like one of the coolest things you could have done with the character. I love seeing like the special trooper like Crosshair become like a loyalist to the Empire and betraying his brothers. Then of course we will get his redemption arc throughout Season 2, but in Season 1 he's totally a villain and he's totally willing to kill his brothers. This is also where Omega gets introduced to the squad, and if I'm being completely honest, I was not too excited when Omega was introduced. The squadron itself is too like established in the galaxy, and you always need that one character to kind of be the eyes of the audience, in the sense that they have to ask questions that we the audience don't understand. So she's able to learn, and we as the audience are able to learn with her as she gets to explore the wider galaxy for the first time. And while I didn't necessarily like her when she was first introduced, I have to say she has firmly put herself in this squadron, and I honestly can't see the squadron without her, which is where we're going to start Season 3. So that'll be interesting, seeing the Hunter, Wrecker, Echo trio without Omega. Kind of what I was saying earlier about Wrecker and Crosshair's relationship. There is a moment in episode 3 where Wrecker says he will miss Crosshair.
Fine. I'll say it. I kinda miss him.
He shot you, remember?
Ha! I sure do.
And yeah, I never realized how close Wrecker and Crosshair actually were as brothers. Like, I don't feel like Tech and Crosshair would necessarily get along, or even Echo and Crosshair. Hunter and Crosshair have like a good dynamic. Season 1 gives us the first part of the Empire's new expansion. There are big changes coming to the galaxy, and we get to see them play out for the first time. The Empire starts recruiting soldiers instead of relying on clones. We see citizens exchanging Republic credits for Imperial credits at the cost of registering your chain code. I really like seeing world building like this, Like every time we see like a stormtrooper ask for their identification, now we kind of have an idea of where this started. This kind of world building is always really, really rewarding to see as a Star Wars fan. And I hope we get to see more of this kind of world building, of seeing the gradual transformation in season 3. Like maybe we'll get our first official Stormtrooper armor, or our first Imperial Star Destroyer or TIE Fighter. That would be kind of awesome for them to be like, what is this new fighter they have? And it's the common TIE Fighter that we're used to, but for them it's a novelty. I also forgot that Sid was originally introduced by Echo as an old Jedi informant. Like not many Jedi would be dealing with underworld agents like Sid. Like there's really only the one Jedi I can think of, which is of course Quinlan Vos. So it is possible that moving into season 3, the whole Asajj Ventress arc could be connected to Sid and Sid's hypothetical relationship with Quinlan. Cad Bane is returning in season 3. In the first season, Bane and Hunter have like a really awesome standoff. And I think if they were to rematch, Bane should still win. Last time, Bane was hired by like the head Kaminoan, and he was supposed to bring Omega back. But Nala Se hired Fennec Shand to like go and save Omega from Cad Bane, and which of course Fennec Shand is also coming back. And another thought that actually just occurred to me right now is that with these two bounty hunters returning, there might be a massive bounty out for Hunter and Wrecker and Echo. And that's where Ventress could even come in. She could be going back to her bounty hunting ways that we see at the beginning of Dark Disciple and in the Clone Wars. In season 1, we get to see both Kanan and Hera. Jumping ahead a little, in season 2, we get to see Director Krennic. I wonder who else we would get to see in season 3. Just a small wish list for me would be Maz Kanata, Darth Vader, anyone from Rogue One, maybe Two Tubes. And don't take this the wrong way, because like I don't want my season 3 of Bad Batch just flooded with cameos. But I do think it would be cool if we saw at least one of these characters, or someone who I'm not thinking about. Next, the Venators destroy Tipoca City. We get to see some regret in the clones who fired upon their homes. And of course, in season 2, this is talked about where some clones are even rebelling. But this is the first seeds of a clone rebellion that might be building up to a much bigger clone rebellion in season 3. In this episode, we also get our first glimpse at a Crosshair Omega team up, which is coming up. The Angry Trooper and the Optimistic Kid is going to be a very fun dynamic. The last thing we're going to look at is, of course, Bad Batch Season 2. The first thing in Season 2 that I noted was when we traveled to Kashyyyk. It reminded me of the Clone Wars deleted season, because there was an arc with the Bad Batch that was going to explain how Yoda has like good relations with the Wookiees. The Clone Wars team built out sets and stuff on Kashyyyk, built these creatures, and then reused them for the Bad Batch TV show. The more I think about it, they've reused a lot of assets from these deleted seasons. I mean, in season 1, we go to Pantora, which was a deleted set for Dark Disciples arc. I mean, even Ventress herself is a deleted asset. So going into season 3, the only like planet I can think of that we as an audience have seen is Utapau. There's a Anakin and Obi-Wan arc where they travel all over Utapau. It would be fun to travel back to that planet, especially now that it's under Imperial occupation. I don't expect it, but if season 3 follows the same trend of season 1 and 2 of bringing back deleted assets, it could happen. Season 2 also introduces us to Dr. Hemlock, which I think will be the main villain in season 3. And Hemlock wants Omega and captures Omega, and I honestly forgot why Omega was so important. I thought it was her DNA, that she was an unaltered clone, even though she's a girl, that she doesn't have the rapid aging, so there might be something special with her DNA. But as we learn, Omega was only captured to be used as a bargaining chip to make Nala Se do her cloning science experiments. So I don't expect any experimentation on Omega moving into season 3. Trailers don't indicate anything like this. She's kind of just around to motivate Nala Se into doing cloning science. Small detail I noticed when the squad visits Pabu is Tech actually teaches Omega how to fly. Throughout season 2, we learn that Omega is learning how to fly and Tech is teaching her and is making sure that she has these rigorous requirements. Like, she can't even begin to learn how to fly until she's memorized all the controls or something like that. In the season 3 trailer, we see Omega crashing a ship. And I have to wonder if there's gonna be any kind of moment where while she's powering up the ship or while she's flying, she thinks back to her time when Tech was teaching her. Hopping back to season 1 for just a second, Tarkin was a much bigger villain in season 1 than he was in season 2. And I think he'll be an even lesser villain in season 3, as we'll probably focus more on Hemlock. But in season 2, we do see Tarkin and Hemlock butting heads a little bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get to see more of their competition for pushing their own personal agendas and projects, and seeing how the Imperial bureaucracy kind of butts heads. In the season 2 finale, we get to see Saw Gerrera pop up again. He has been in season 1 and season 2 now, so if we follow the trend, he could be in season 3, especially because Hunter could put part of the blame of losing Tech on Saw Gerrera, because it was Saw Gerrera's explosions that caused everything to go awry. So I do think that the batch should put some blame on Saw Gerrera for Tech's death, and it would be very fun to see them reunite and be able to lash out, fight each other. In season 2, all the TK troopers are wearing the same armor, including the pilots. I kind of hope we get to see more variants of the TK trooper in season 3, like the TK shock trooper. The way Hunter talks about living their life out on Pabu in the season finale makes me absolutely dread the Imperial assault that we are going to see in season 3. I'm sorry if this spoils it, but when you're a pixel peeper like me and you look at every frame in the trailers, you're going to start making some connections that we are returning to Pabu, that the Empire is going to land and take control of Pabu. I would like to see the people fight back, but I just don't think there's any hope that that battle ends well for them. And then the last thing is the big reveal of season 2 that Omega has a sister. She seems very loyal to Hemlock, but that could change. I don't really know what to think about her too much, but I'm excited to see that twist develop in season 3. My final thoughts as we wrap this up are I'm excited for more Palpatine on screen. We've seen him in the trailer, he's coming back. I know I'm in the minority on this, but I really do want to see this all connect to Snoke and Palpatine's greater plan that would go into the sequels. I think that, at least for me, what fixes Star Wars is usually more Star Wars, so I don't necessarily like how Palpatine returns in episode 9. So seeing Palpatine's like very early plans, like this early in the timeline, makes it a little easier to digest when I go back to rewatch episode 9. So that's everything I noticed from past Bad Batch projects and the journey to Bad Batch season 3. I would love to get your thoughts in the comments below. Please let me know if I missed anything or if there's anything you want to add to the conversation. I love chatting with you guys, and I really enjoyed how going through this process really brought some excitement back to Star Wars for me, and how excited I actually am going into Bad Batch season 3. I hope that I can share that with you guys, and that after this video, you're just a little bit excited too. Let me know in the comments below if I succeeded or if you're just not excited at all. I really appreciate everyone who made it this far into the video. please leave a like, and would you consider subscribing? I have a lot more videos coming your way, more re-edits, and I have some really exciting projects that I want to share with y'all. And of course, I will see y'all in the next one.